They laughed at the homeless veteran, then he revealed his true identity as a tech CEO. The air in the opulent, glass-paneled boardroom of Nexus Innovations crackled with an almost unbearable tension. Outside, the city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds, indifferent to the drama unfolding within. The vast expanse of the city, usually a source of inspiration, seemed apathetic, uncaring of the human theater playing out behind the reflective glass. Inside, however, a different kind of light reflected off the polished mahogany table, the cold gleam of avarice and the fiery spark of impending doom. Dexter Vance, impeccably tailored in a charcoal suit that cost more than some homes, a sneer playing on his lips, gestured dismissively towards the figure huddled awkwardly in the corner. His expensive watch glinted, a stark contrast to the worn fabric of the man he pointed at. Honestly, security, Dexter's voice, usually smooth and authoritative, was now laced with a venomous disdain that bordered on open disgust. I don't know how this vagabond even got past the lobby. This is a crucial board meeting, not a soup kitchen. Around him, a chorus of polite, self-satisfied chuckles rippled through the room, punctuated by a few uncomfortable coughs from less zealous board members. Their eyes, however, remained fixed on the man in the corner, a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled contempt in their gazes. The scent of expensive coffee and stale ambition hung heavy in the air. The figure in question, a grizzled veteran with a thick, unkempt beard that seemed to hold years of forgotten stories, slowly pushed himself up from the ornate Persian rug. His faded military jacket, worn thin at the elbows, spoke of countless days under open skies, and his combat boots, scuffed and cracked, bore witness to a life lived far from plush boardrooms. His posture was initially slouched, his eyes, previously downcast as if to avoid the harsh glare of judgment, now began to lift. Beneath the layers of grime and simulated fatigue, an unexpected sharpness, a keen intelligence, began to reveal itself. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a smile that held more irony than amusement. It was a smile of a man who knew a secret, a profound, unsettling truth. "Soup kitchen, you say, Mr. Vance?" The veteran's voice rasped, a deliberate tremor in his tone that suggested a life of hardship and exposure. "Perhaps it is. A kitchen where the hungry are fed, and the deserving are rewarded." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the faces of the assembled executives, each one a monument to corporate success. His eyes lingered for a fraction longer on Dexter Vance, whose own smug smirk was beginning to falter, replaced by a flicker of unease, a nascent prickle of apprehension. But rest assured, the veteran continued, his voice gaining a subtle, underlying power, a resonance that vibrated through the hushed room. "The game is over. The tests are complete, and the true nature of this kitchen is about to be revealed." A nervous titter went through the room, quickly suppressed. "Tests? What gibberish is this?" Dexter scoffed, attempting to regain his composure, though a bead of sweat now trickled down his temple, betraying his mounting anxiety. He straightened his tie, a gesture of desperate self-assurance. "Are we to listen to the ramblings of a homeless man? This is an insult to Nexus Innovations, an insult to my leadership." His voice rose in pitch, betraying the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. The veteran merely chuckled, a sound surprisingly deep and resonant despite its feigned hoarseness. It was a sound that seemed to mock the very foundations of the room, sending a shiver down the spines of those who heard it. He straightened his shoulders, and suddenly, the slumped posture vanished. In its place emerged an imposing bearing that commanded attention, an aura of authority that made the executives, accustomed to being the ones in power, instinctively sit straighter. "Your leadership, Mr. Vance?" His eyes, now fully unveiled, burned with an intelligent, almost predatory intensity, like a hunter finally closing in on his prey. "A leadership built on the very foundation of greed and superficiality I sought to dismantle. No, Mr. Vance. The only thing you've led is your own inevitable downfall." The room fell silent, the previous chuckles replaced by a chilling quiet that pressed down on everyone. Dexter's face contorted in a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the figure before him with the dismissive image he had cultivated. He opened his mouth to retort, but no words came, choked by a sudden, inexplicable fear. The veteran simply reached up a hand, and with a deliberate, slow motion, began to unbutton his grimy jacket. The reveal was imminent, a truth about to burst forth, and the weight of it pressed down on everyone in the room, threatening to crush the illusions they had so carefully constructed for themselves. To understand the profound theatricality of this moment, the meticulous planning, and the sheer audacity of the man behind the ragged clothes, one needed to delve into the mind of Orion Sterling. He was not merely a tech billionaire. He was a visionary, a force of nature who had built Nexus Innovations from a garage startup into a global titan, fundamentally altering how humanity interacted with technology. His brilliance was undeniable, his innovations groundbreaking. He had spearheaded the development of the neural net interface, a technology that allowed for seamless, intuitive interaction with digital information, making complex data accessible to everyone. He believed in a world where technology democratized knowledge, bridged divides, and uplifted lives. Yet, despite his immense success, a gnawing emptiness had begun to fester within him, a sense of profound disillusionment that shadowed his every achievement. Orion had served his country in military intelligence during a period of intense global instability. He had seen the world from a vantage point few others ever would. In the crucible of covert operations, where split-second decisions determined life or death, integrity, loyalty, and a selfless dedication to a greater cause were not mere platitudes. They were the very bedrock of existence. He had witnessed true heroism in the bleakest of circumstances, faced genuine danger that stripped away all pretense, and understood the profound weight of consequence. He remembered a mission in a war-torn region, where his team risked everything to deliver medical supplies to a remote village, not for glory or reward, but simply because it was the right thing to do. That shared sense of purpose, of working towards a common, noble goal, had imprinted itself deeply on his soul. When he transitioned into the corporate world, he carried these values with him, a perhaps naive hope that technology, in its purest form, could elevate humanity in the same way he had once striven to protect it. Nexus Innovations, in its nascent years, had reflected his ethos. It was a company driven by innovation, ethical practices, and a genuine desire to improve lives. The initial team, a small, passionate group of engineers and designers, had shared his vision. They worked long hours, fueled by pizza and a collective dream, not by stock options. They celebrated breakthroughs that promised to enhance education, improve healthcare access, and connect people across vast distances. But as the company grew, as billions accumulated, as the company moved from a quirky startup office to sprawling glass towers, Orion watched with increasing dismay as the corporate landscape shifted. Greed became the primary motivator, empathy a weakness to be exploited, and success was measured solely in quarterly reports and market share, not human impact. He saw colleagues, once driven by passion and a genuine intellectual curiosity, succumb to the siren song of wealth. Their eyes hardened, their words grew sharper, their humanity dimming, replaced by a calculating detachment. His disillusionment reached its zenith after a series of particularly ruthless corporate maneuvers by rival firms, and, more painfully, by some of his own employees who had risen through the ranks, seemingly adopting the very cutthroat tactics he deplored. They argued that this is just how business is done, a phrase that grated on his ears. Dexter Vance was a prime example, a festering wound in the very heart of his company's ideals. Dexter had been Orion's protege, a bright, ambitious young man with a knack for strategy and an undeniable charisma. Orion had seen potential in him, a spark of brilliance that he hoped to nurture, to guide towards a noble purpose. But as Dexter ascended, first within Nexus Innovations, pushing for increasingly aggressive tactics, then to a leadership position at the rival Apex Dynamics, he shed any semblance of the values Orion held dear. Dexter became a mirror reflecting Orion's deepest fears about the corporate world, ruthless, materialistic, openly dismissive of anyone deemed unproductive or unsuccessful. He frequently espoused the survival of the fittest philosophy, not as a metaphor for innovation, but as a justification for crushing the vulnerable, for dismissing any social responsibility as a waste of capital. Veterans, in particular, were often subjects of Dexter's thinly veiled contempt, viewed as relics, drains on society, or simply unadaptable to the demands of the modern corporate jungle. Orion often heard Dexter's comments, a bitter taste rising in his throat. The breaking point for Orion came during a charity gala he himself had hosted, an event meant to raise funds for a new initiative supporting veteran reintegration into the workforce. The opulent ballroom of the Grand Hyatt shimmered with crystal chandeliers and the hushed chatter of the city's elite. He overheard Dexter, surrounded by other executives, sipping champagne and openly mocking a veteran who was struggling to find employment despite his decorated service and specialized skills. "Oh, the good old days," Dexter had sneered, his voice loud enough to carry over the clinking of glasses, when they just sent you off to war and you either died or came back expecting a medal and a pension. Now they want a job? Adapt or perish, I say. The market owes no one a living, especially not those who can evolve. Orion's blood had run cold. The words were a direct assault on everything he believed in, a perversion of the very sacrifices he had seen made. He realized then that the rot had spread too far, too deeply. His company, his legacy, was at risk of falling into the hands of people who would strip it of its soul, turning his vision into a mere profit machine, devoid of humanity. He couldn't simply fire them or denounce them. They would just move on, their toxic ideologies intact, spreading their cynicism elsewhere. He needed more than a dismissal. He needed a definitive, undeniable test. He needed to see humanity stripped bare, to witness raw, unfiltered reactions to vulnerability. He yearned to find genuine empathy, true selflessness, particularly after his experiences in service had taught him the profound value of such traits. He needed to find a successor, not just for Nexus Innovations, but for the ethos he wished his company to embody, a successor worthy of carrying the torch of ethical innovation, someone whose moral compass was unswayed by the allure of power and wealth. The plan formed slowly, meticulously, drawing upon his military intelligence background, where deception and observation were paramount. He would disappear, shed his identity, and immerse himself in the very world Dexter and his ilk scorned. He would become a homeless veteran, a symbol of the very people the corporate world so readily dismissed. He meticulously crafted his disguise, worn out, ill-fitting clothes sourced from charity bins, specifically chosen for their faded hues and threadbare nature, a weeks-old beard, grown for the purpose, subtly tinted with gray to add age. Contact lenses to subtly alter his piercing blue eye color to a duller, faded shade, and a practiced limp from an old, minor injury exaggerated for effect, creating a believable vulnerability. He studied the mannerisms, the stoicism, the quiet dignity of the veterans he had known, ensuring his portrayal was authentic, down to the slight tremor in his hands. He drained his personal accounts of all but a few $100s, leaving his vast fortune managed by a trusted, discreet legal team led by Evelyn Reed, who were sworn to absolute secrecy about his plan. Only privy to the broadest outline of his intentions, he informed his closest, most loyal executives that he was taking an indefinite sabbatical for personal reasons, and then he simply vanished. His objective was twofold: to observe the corporate elite, specifically Dexter, in their natural habitat, and to find a counterpoint, someone whose inherent goodness shone through the cynicism and indifference of the world. He wanted to see if genuine kindness still existed, untainted by the expectation of reward, a pure, uncalculating act of human connection. Only then, he resolved, could he decide the future of Nexus Innovations and the legacy he wished to leave behind. He knew the path would be difficult, emotionally taxing, a descent into a world of hardship he had only previously observed from a distance. But the future of his life's work, and perhaps his faith in humanity itself, depended on it. Orion's new reality as SGT Miller was a stark, brutal contrast to his former life of private jets, Michelin-starred meals, and hushed conversations with world leaders. He spent his days on the fringes of the city's financial district, a silent observer in a world that chose not to see him. The biting cold of concrete seeping through his worn boots, the constant gnawing of hunger, the pervasive scent of exhaust fumes, stale food, and human neglect, these were his new companions. He navigated the labyrinthine streets, learning the rhythms of the city's underbelly, the unspoken rules of survival. He saw the city from below, a dizzying array of polished shoes and designer handbags hurrying past, their owners oblivious to the silent struggles unfolding around them, the invisible lives teeming just beneath the surface of their everyday. He witnessed countless acts of indifference, moments where eyes slid past him as if he were part of the scenery, but what he sought were the exceptions, the fleeting glimmers of humanity. His first planned encounter with Dexter Vance was orchestrated with the precision of a military operation, a psychological test set against the backdrop of urban indifference. Orion had tracked Dexter's routine, knowing his preferred high-end coffee shop near Apex Dynamics, a sleek, minimalist establishment frequented by the city's power brokers. One brisk Tuesday morning, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, Orion strategically positioned himself near the entrance, wrapped in a threadbare, patched-up blanket, holding a battered styrofoam cup, his body language carefully conveying vulnerability and resignation. He watched as Dexter emerged, flanked by two junior executives, all three engrossed in a discussion about market projections and acquisition targets. Dexter, sleek in a bespoke suit that seemed to repel dust, held a tablet in one hand, his face alight with a smug, self-satisfied expression, the glow of success radiating from him. As they neared, Orion shuffled forward, feigning a deep, racking cough, a sound designed to draw attention. "Excuse me, sirs," Orion rasped, his voice rough from disuse and the simulated elements, a careful blend of humility and desperation. "Any spare change for a cup of coffee?" "Just trying to stay warm, sir." Dexter's eyes, cold and sharp as polished steel, flicked over Orion, then quickly away, as if avoiding a particularly unpleasant stain on the pristine pavement. He didn't break stride, his pace unyielding. "Honestly, the audacity," he muttered, loud enough for his associates to hear, but not quite directed at Orion. His tone dripped with contempt. "These people just expect handouts. Don't they understand that success is earned? Go get a job, old man." One of the junior executives, eager to impress his superior, gave Orion a wide berth, almost bumping into a lamppost to avoid proximity. The other offered a weak, apologetic shrug, a fleeting flicker of discomfort in his eyes, before quickly falling back in step with Dexter, their clipped laughter echoing briefly as they rounded the corner and disappeared into the throng of commuters. Orion watched them go, a faint, bitter taste in his mouth. It wasn't the rejection that stung. He had anticipated it, even relied on it for his data. It was the casual cruelty, the dismissive lack of even a shred of human acknowledgement. Dexter didn't see a person. He saw an inconvenience, a symbol of everything he despised, a statistical anomaly to be ignored. This confirmed Orion's worst suspicions, solidifying the cold, hard reality of Dexter's character. Days turned into weeks, each one a testament to Orion's resilience and the depth of his conviction. He continued to observe Dexter multiple times, always finding the same pattern of callousness, the unyielding core of his self-serving nature. Once, he saw Dexter publicly berate a street artist for cluttering the sidewalk with his vibrant, hopeful chalk drawings. Even though the artist was clearly struggling, his face etched with quiet despair. Another time, Dexter loudly complained about a fundraiser for veterans housing, calling it a misguided drain on resources during a televised interview, his voice oozing disdain for anything that didn't directly contribute to the bottom line. Each instance solidified the image of the man Orion had once mentored, confirming the profound moral chasm that had opened between them. Yet, amidst this harshness, Orion also found glimpses of what he sought, like rare wildflowers pushing through concrete. He observed the quiet generosity of a street vendor sharing a meal with an older woman, the patient kindness of a librarian helping a struggling student, the unbidden laughter of children playing freely in a small, neglected park. It was a cold, late afternoon when he first saw her. He was sitting on a park bench, sketching in a small, worn notebook, a habit he had picked up to pass the time and observe without drawing suspicion, a small anchor to his former life. A young woman, no older than 30, sat a few benches away, hunched over a laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a frantic, determined energy. She wore a thick, but clearly well-worn, wool coat, its fabric slightly frayed at the cuffs, and a half-eaten sandwich sat on a napkin beside her. Her face was smudged with fatigue, the lines of exhaustion visible, but her eyes, despite the weariness, held a bright, determined spark, a quiet fire that intrigued him. This was Alara. Alara was a freelance coder, navigating the treacherous waters of the gig economy. Her days were a relentless cycle of coding projects, client calls, and late-night caffeine-fueled sprints in dimly lit cafes. Despite her undeniable technical prowess, a talent for unraveling complex algorithms and crafting elegant solutions, securing stable, high-paying work was a constant battle. She often found herself working for less than she deserved, just to pay her modest rent and keep her old, sputtering car running. Yet, every Tuesday and Thursday evening, without fail, she volunteered at a local community shelter, helping with their soup kitchen and tech literacy programs, patiently teaching digital skills to those who had been left behind by the technological revolution. She had little, but gave generously of what she had: her time, her energy, her expertise. Orion observed Alara for several days, anonymously, from a distance. He watched her patiently help an elderly woman navigate a tablet, her voice gentle and encouraging, her hand guiding the hesitant fingers. He saw her share her lunch, not just once, but repeatedly, with a group of hungry children who frequented the park, their faces lighting up at her kindness. Her compassion was organic, unforced, a natural extension of her being. It was exactly what he was looking for, a purity of spirit he rarely encountered in the circles he once inhabited. One evening, as dusk settled, casting long shadows across the park and painting the sky in hues of purple and gray, a light, cold rain began to fall. Orion, still in character, huddled deeper into his blanket, shivering visibly, his body betraying a convincing chill. He had deliberately chosen this spot, knowing Alara usually stayed late to finish her work, pushing through the last lines of code. Alara, packing up her laptop, her fingers numb with cold, noticed him. She hesitated, a fleeting internal debate, then walked over, a small, worried frown on her face. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the ambient city hum. "You look awfully cold." Orion shivered convincingly, letting the chill seep into his bones. "Just trying to make it through the night, lass," he rasped, keeping his gaze downcast, maintaining the illusion of a man too weary to meet eyes. Alara's brow furrowed further, her concern deepening. She looked at the half-eaten sandwich she had saved, her frugal dinner. It wasn't much, just half a turkey on rye, but it was all she had left. "Here," she said, extending it to him, her hand steady despite the cold. "It's not much, but it's warm. And I have some water." She offered him a small, reusable bottle, its surface beaded with condensation. Orion slowly looked up, his eyes meeting hers. He saw no pity, no condescension, no judgment, only genuine concern, a pure, unadulterated human connection. "You sure, lass? You look like you've had a long day yourself." His voice was a test, a probe. A tired smile touched her lips, a glimmer of resilience. "We all have our days, don't we? But a little warmth goes a long way." She sat down on the bench beside him, keeping a respectful distance, and began to talk. She didn't ask for his story, didn't pry into his circumstances, or offer unsolicited advice. She simply spoke about her day, about her hopes for a big coding project, about the challenges of freelance work, and about the small joys of volunteering. She treated him not as a homeless man, but as another human being, worthy of conversation and respect, a fellow traveler in the vast, indifferent city. "It's tough out there," she said, her voice tinged with a quiet resilience that mirrored his own military-honed perseverance. "But you just keep going, right? One foot in front of the other. Things always get better if you keep trying." She offered a quiet, encouraging word, a sentiment that resonated deeply with Orion's own core beliefs about perseverance and the enduring human spirit. She shared her small meal, her warmth, and her unwavering belief in the simple goodness of life, all without expectation of repayment or recognition. She didn't know who he was or what he possessed. She only saw a man in need and offered what she could, a true act of selfless compassion. This single interaction, more than any other, solidified Orion's decision. He had found his counterpoint. He had found someone whose soul was untouched by the greed and cynicism that consumed the corporate world. He knew then, with absolute certainty, what he had to do. The test was over. His purpose, refined by weeks of hardship and observation, became crystal clear. The setting for the grand reveal was deliberately chosen, the annual shareholders' meeting of Nexus Innovations. It was a high-stakes event, a convergence of power and finance, with investors, analysts, and the global press gathered in the colossal convention hall to hear about the company's future. Dexter Vance, having positioned himself as the leading candidate to take over the ailing CEO, a fabricated rumor meticulously spread by Orion's legal team to draw Dexter out and expose his true ambitions, was preening at the podium. Basking in the spotlight, the air thrummed with expectation and a palpable sense of corporate power. He was midway through a confident, almost arrogant speech about aggressive market expansion and ruthless optimization, words that echoed the very values Orion despised. A stark reminder of how far his company had drifted from its original course. And so, Dexter boomed, his voice amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, echoing through the massive convention hall. With my vision, Apex Dynamic strategic partnerships, and a few necessary adjustments to Nexus's more idealistic projects, we will usher in a new era of unparalleled profitability. A smattering of applause followed, mostly from his own sycophants and those who stood to benefit from his cold, hard approach. His eyes gleamed with anticipated triumph. Just as Dexter reached his dramatic crescendo, a commotion erupted at the back of the hall. The large, ornate double doors, usually guarded by stern-faced security, burst open, and a figure stood silhouetted against the bright hallway lights. It was the grizzled veteran, SGT Miller, his silhouette instantly recognizable to Dexter, though the sight seemed impossible. A collective gasp swept through the room, a wave of disbelief rippling through the assembled elite. Murmurs erupted. What is he doing here? Security. How did he get in? Dexter, startled mid-sentence, squinted at the intruder. His face paled as he recognized the ragged clothes, the unkempt beard, the familiar posture. You, he hissed, his composure cracking, his voice barely a coherent sound. Get out. This is a private event. You'll be arrested for trespassing. Orion, still in his veteran guise, began to walk slowly, deliberately down the center aisle. Each step was measured, powerful, yet with a subtle, mocking drag of his injured leg. He didn't speak, his gaze fixed solely on Dexter, who now stood frozen at the podium, his face a mask of bewilderment and burgeoning rage, slowly morphing into dawning horror. The murmurs grew louder, turning into whispers of disbelief. Is that? No, it can't be. Suddenly, as if on cue, a sleek, black limousine pulled up right outside the hall's main entrance, visible through the panoramic windows, its tinted glass reflecting the chaos within. The door opened, and a stern-faced woman in a tailored power suit, her expression unreadable, followed by two burly, impassive security personnel, stepped out. She was Orion's chief legal counsel, Evelyn Reed, a woman known for her icy demeanor, her sharp intellect, and her unyielding loyalty to Orion. She glanced into the hall, her eyes immediately finding Orion. She gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, a signal that the final act was in motion. Orion reached the foot of the stage, directly in front of Dexter Vance. The entire hall was silent now, every eye fixed on the bizarre tableau, the homeless veteran confronting the powerful executive. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, Orion reached up to his face. He unbuttoned the top of his worn military jacket, revealing a pristine, tailored suit jacket underneath, a splash of dark, expensive fabric against the faded green. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, almost invisible device. With a soft click, the subtle prosthetic that enhanced his limp was disengaged. He stood perfectly straight, his posture radiating authority and power, the slumped shoulders of the veteran replaced by the commanding bearing of a true leader. Then, with a practiced hand, he began to peel away the layers of his disguise. First, a thin, almost translucent silicone prosthetic that altered the contours of his nose and cheekbones, revealing the sharp, aquiline features beneath. Then, a more complex piece, a meticulously crafted beard and wig, designed to look unkempt and gray, came away, revealing thick, dark, perfectly coiffed hair. Finally, he removed the contact lenses, and his eyes, previously a dull, faded blue, now blazed with the piercing, intelligent sapphire of Orion Sterling, a light that seemed to cut through the very air. A collective, thunderous gasp ripped through the hall, a sound of profound shock and recognition. Orion Sterling, someone shrieked, a voice barely audible above the rising clamor. It can't be. He's alive. The whispers turned into a roar of shock and disbelief, a wave of realization washing over the audience. Flashbulbs began to pop, a blinding flurry of light illuminating the transformed figure on stage, each flash a hammer blow against the illusion. Dexter Vance stared, his jaw slack, his eyes wide with horror and dawning realization. The blood drained from his face, leaving it ashen, ghostly. He stumbled back, gripping the podium for support, his earlier arrogance melting away like snow in the sun. Orion, he croaked, his voice barely a whisper, ragged with disbelief. But you were gone. His carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. Orion Sterling, the billionaire tech visionary, the man who had been missing for months, stood before them, impeccably dressed, radiating an aura of quiet power that filled the hall. He looked directly at Dexter, his gaze unwavering, a silent judge. "Yes, Mr. Vance," he said, his voice now deep and resonant, the raspy tremor completely gone. It was the voice of command, of absolute authority, of a man who held all the cards. "I was gone. Gone to observe, to learn, to truly understand the character of the people who would lead Nexus Innovations into the future. And you, Mr. Vance, failed the test spectacularly." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, heavy with accusation, each syllable a hammer blow. "For weeks, I walked among you, unseen, unheard, dismissed. I saw the true face of your ambition, Mr. Vance. I saw your contempt for the less fortunate, your disdain for those who have served, your belief that human value is measured solely in net worth." His eyes swept across the stunned faces in the audience, then settled back on Dexter, whose trembling was now visible. "I saw you, Mr. Vance, scoff at a veteran asking for a simple cup of coffee. I saw you mock the very idea of compassion, dismissing it as weakness. And I saw you, just moments ago, proudly declare your intention to strip this company of its soul for mere profitability, sacrificing integrity for an illusion of gain." Orion's voice grew louder, filling the cavernous hall, resonating with righteous indignation. Nexus Innovations was built on a foundation of innovation, integrity, and a profound belief in technology's power to elevate humanity. It was never about ruthless optimization or cutting corners at the expense of human dignity. It was about creating a better future, ethically and compassionately, a legacy of positive change. He gestured towards Evelyn Reed, who had now entered the hall, her presence adding to the undeniable authority of the moment, a silent, formidable witness. "My legal team has been meticulously documenting every unethical decision, every dismissive comment, every act of corporate callousness you, and certain members of this board, have exhibited during my absence. The evidence is irrefutable." Dexter Vance's knees buckled. He was no longer a confident executive. He was a terrified man, stripped bare, exposed. The powerful CEO was revealed to be nothing more than a contemptible, cruel individual, and the homeless veteran was his judge, delivering a sentence more devastating than any court could issue. His empire, built on sand, crumbled before his eyes. The fallout from Orion Sterling's revelation was immediate and catastrophic for Dexter Vance. The news exploded across every media channel, a digital wildfire, dwarfing all other corporate stories. Billionaire CEO's undercover test exposes corporate greed, screamed headlines from New York to Tokyo. Dexter Vance's empire crumbles as Orion Sterling returns. The carefully constructed image of Dexter Vance as a shrewd, visionary leader shattered into a million pieces, revealing the rotten core beneath. Within hours, Apex Dynamics, already reeling from the scandal and the sudden collapse of a major merger deal, announced Dexter's immediate termination, citing gross misconduct and a profound misalignment with company values. His lucrative stock options were frozen, his golden parachute rescinded, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and the ruins of his reputation. His public humiliation was total, broadcast globally. Former colleagues and supposed friends, who had once flocked to his side, now openly condemned him, desperate to distance themselves from his toxic reputation. Investors pulled out, legal actions were threatened, and the public outcry was immense, a wave of collective outrage at his hypocrisy. Dexter Vance, once a rising star, became a pariah, his career, his wealth, and his reputation utterly annihilated. He lost everything, not just his job and his fortune, but the respect and influence he had so desperately craved. The man who had dismissed the less fortunate was now, by all accounts, facing a future with very little, a bitter taste of his own medicine. While Dexter's world imploded, Alara's was about to transform in a way she could never have imagined. A few days after the shareholders' meeting, still reeling from the news of Orion Sterling's return and the shocking story of his disguise, Alara received a cryptic email. It was from an official Nexus Innovations address, requesting her presence at a specific address, a high-rise building she recognized as the company's headquarters. Thinking it was a potential client meeting, perhaps a referral from her volunteer work at the shelter's tech program, she arrived, nervous but hopeful, clutching her worn portfolio. She was led through a series of gleaming hallways, past hushed offices, and into a large, elegantly furnished office with panoramic views of the city skyline, a view that seemed to stretch into infinity. Standing by the window, his back to her, was a tall, distinguished man. He turned, and Alara's breath caught in her throat. It was Orion Sterling, the legendary CEO, the face that had dominated every news channel for days. But more importantly, it was the homeless veteran, SGT Miller, the man to whom she had given her last sandwich just days before, his eyes now blazing with a familiar, yet strangely new, intensity. Alara's eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and a dawning, overwhelming sense of the surreal. "Yes, sir," she stammered, feeling her cheeks flush a deep crimson. I don't understand. You're him." Her mind struggled to reconcile the two vastly different images. Orion smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Please, Alara, call me Orion. And yes, I am. I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. I needed to see humanity, truly see it, without the filters of wealth or status, without the pretense that so often clouds judgment. And you, Alara, shone brighter than anyone." His voice was gentle, devoid of any judgment, only profound appreciation. He walked towards her, his gaze kind, his presence commanding yet comforting. "I observed you for weeks. I saw your dedication, your unwavering compassion, your willingness to give despite your own struggles. You offered me kindness when I was nothing, a warm meal when you had little, and encouragement when the world had offered only scorn. You saw a person, not a problem, a soul in need, not an inconvenience. That, Alara, is a rarer quality than any fortune, more valuable than any algorithm." Alara could only stare, speechless, tears beginning to well in her eyes. She was still processing the fact that the man she had taken for a down-on-his-luck veteran was one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world, the architect of Nexus Innovations. The magnitude of the revelation was staggering. "Nexus Innovations," Orion continued, his voice softer, filled with a renewed sense of purpose, "needs leadership built on integrity, on empathy, on a true desire to innovate for the betterment of all, not just for profit. That is the legacy I want to leave. And that, Alara, is why I am offering you a position that will redefine your future and perhaps the future of this company, shifting its very direction. He gestured to a comfortable chair, inviting her to sit. I've reviewed your coding portfolio, your volunteer work, your academic records. You are brilliant, Alara, and more importantly, you possess an unshakable moral compass, a heart that truly understands human need. I am offering you the directorship of a newly formed division within Nexus Innovations, the Social Impact Technologies Division. Your mandate will be to develop ethical AI, accessible technology for underserved communities, and innovations that genuinely improve quality of life, not just generate revenue. You will have full autonomy, unlimited resources, and a dedicated team committed to your vision. Alara's jaw dropped. A directorship? Unlimited resources? The opportunity to build technology for good? It was a dream beyond her wildest imaginings, a complete reversal of her precarious existence. But I'm just a freelance coder, she whispered, tears now freely flowing down her cheeks, a mix of disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. Orion chuckled gently, a sound of profound satisfaction. You are much more than that, Alara. You are the embodiment of what this company needs. And as for your living situation, he added, a subtle kindness in his voice, I've also taken the liberty of arranging for a fully furnished apartment located conveniently close to our headquarters, with all expenses covered for the next 2 years. Consider it a signing bonus for the most important hire Nexus Innovations has ever made, a true investment in a brighter future. Alara was overwhelmed. Her mind reeled. From struggling to make rent and giving away her last sandwich, she was now being offered a position of immense power and influence, a comfortable home, and the opportunity to make a real difference in the world, all because of a simple, uncalculating act of kindness. The stark contrast between Dexter's spectacular downfall and her own sudden, miraculous ascent was almost too much to comprehend, a testament to the unexpected turns of fate. Months later, the dust had settled, and a new era had begun at Nexus Innovations. Orion Sterling, having reaffirmed his commitment to ethical innovation and a people-first approach, was once again at the helm, but with a renewed sense of purpose and a lighter heart. He had delegated many of his day-to-day responsibilities, entrusting the company's direction to a refreshed, ethically aligned leadership team he had personally vetted. He spent more time pursuing his passion for sustainable technology and philanthropy, ensuring Nexus's immense wealth was used for good, investing in global initiatives for clean energy and digital literacy. The cynical edge that had once shadowed his eyes had softened, replaced by a quiet contentment, a profound peace. He had found what he was looking for, not just a worthy successor, but a renewed faith in humanity's capacity for goodness, a belief that had been sorely tested. Alara, once the struggling freelance coder, had blossomed into a confident and inspiring leader. The Social Impact Technologies division under her guidance was already making waves, developing groundbreaking, accessible AI tools for education in developing countries, and pioneering ethical data privacy solutions that put user well-being first. She used her newfound resources not just for herself, but to continue her volunteer work on a larger scale, funding scholarships for aspiring coders from disadvantaged backgrounds and establishing new community tech hubs in underserved neighborhoods. Her small apartment had been traded for a spacious, comfortable home, but her humility and genuine desire to help others remained unchanged, serving as a constant reminder of her roots. She knew, more than anyone, that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or market shares, but in the richness of human connection and the depth of one's compassion. Dexter Vance, on the other hand, had vanished from the public eye. Rumors placed him working a low-paying, anonymous job far from the glittering towers he once lorded over, a stark reversal of fortune. His name, once synonymous with ruthless success, was now a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the perils of unbridled ambition and the bitter taste of public condemnation. He had nothing left but the hollow echo of his own scorn, a monument to his own undoing. Orion often reflected on the journey, the profound transformation it had wrought within him. He had descended into the shadows, disguised as the very person society often chose to ignore, only to find the brightest light where he least expected it. He realized that true character isn't forged in the boardroom or measured by the size of one's fortune. It's revealed in the quiet, unassuming moments when no one is watching, when there's nothing to gain, when the cameras are off and the spotlight is elsewhere. It's in the act of offering a stranger a warm meal, a kind word, or a simple moment of human connection, even when one has little to give. For it is in the darkest hours, when all pretenses are stripped away, that the true essence of a person shines through, proving that while wealth may build empires, it is kindness that truly builds character, and that genuine goodness, given without expectations, will always, in its own time and in its own way, find its most profound and deserving reward. If this story of transformation and unexpected justice resonated with you, you'll find many more powerful tales of redemption, hidden heroes, and karmic twist right here on our channel. We delve into the depths of human nature, showing you that kindness truly does have its own profound rewards. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story. And tell us in the comments below. Asterisk, what was the most shocking moment for you in Orion's reveal? Asterisk, if you were in Alara's shoes, what would be the first thing you'd do with your newfound opportunity? Asterisk, have you ever witnessed a small act of kindness that had a huge, unexpected impact? Share your thoughts.